They called him a monster, a demon from the fog, but they never knew the real man behind the legend of Jack the Ripper. In the filthy, gaslit streets of Whitechapel, a killer is stalking the night. The newspapers scream of his brutal crimes. The police are baffled, and a city is held captive by fear. But what if the most terrifying truth isn't the blood he spills, but the reason behind it? This is not the story of a mindless beast. This is the story of a man shattered by loss, a man who believed he was not a murderer, but a surgeon on the rotting soul of humanity itself. He wasn't killing for pleasure. He was killing for a purpose. He was trying to cure the world of its sickness, one life at a time, and quiet the screaming silence his own love left behind. Step into the mind of history's most infamous serial killer. Discover the profound grief, the twisted love, and the chilling artistry that drove his hand. The streets of London will never seem the same again. How far would you go for love? And what sounds would you try to silence forever? If you dare to understand the monster, start reading. Dosed in the Fog, the last confession of Jack the Ripper. The Fog was the third resident of Whitechapel, after the poor and the desperate. It slithered from the Thames, a yellow-gray phantom that coiled through cobbled streets, muffling the cries of babies and the shouts of drunks, swallowing the weak glow of the gaslights. It was in this fog that I lived, and in this fog that I worked. They did not know my name, the newspapers. They called me Jack, Jack the Ripper, a name for a storybook villain. They knew nothing of the surgeon, the artist, the savior. My room was a small, reeking space above a butcher's shop. The smell of old blood seeped up through the floorboards, a constant, comforting perfume. On a small, scarred table lay my tools, not the crude cleavers of the butcher below, but instruments of precision. Scalpels with blades so fine they could part a layer of skin from flesh, like turning a page in a book. A tenaculum for a secure grip, a metacarpal saw for when deeper exploration was required. Each was polished to a mirror shine, laid out on a clean cloth with the reverence of a priest preparing for communion. I was not always this man. Once, I was a boy who loved the workings of clocks, who would spend hours taking them apart to see the tiny, intricate wheels and springs that made them tick. I wanted to be a doctor. I had the hands for it, my teacher said. Steady, clever hands. But poverty is a quicker killer than any disease. There was no money for university, only for a life of grime and struggle. My beloved, Mary, her cheeks grew hollow from hunger. Her cough, a relentless rattling ghost in our single room. The doctors came, when I could afford them. They spoke in Latin, patted my shoulder, and left with my coins. They could not fix her. They could not see the beautiful, failing machine inside her. When she died, the world did not just lose its color, it lost its sound. The silence she left behind was a physical weight, a constant, screaming emptiness in my ears. I took a job as a mortuary assistant. It was there, in the cold, silent room with its tiled walls and the scent of carbolic acid, that I found my calling again. Under the supervision of a disinterested coroner, I was allowed to assist. The first time I held a scalpel and made the Y incision, it was not revulsion I felt, but a profound sense of purpose. Here, at last, was truth. No Latin words to hide behind, no false sympathies, just the stark, beautiful, terrible machinery of life. And I saw the filth that clogged it. I saw the livers, swollen and hard as stone from drink, the lungs, blackened with soot and disease, the wombs corrupted by syphilis. These women, these poor, wretched women of the street, were not sinners. They were broken clocks, and no one was trying to fix them. The first one, Polly Nichols, was an accident of opportunity. I had been following her, not with intent, but with a clinician's eye. She was unwell, her gait unsteady, her laughter too shrill. She stumbled into a dark court off Buck's Row, and I followed. When I approached, she slurred a proposition, her breath foul with gin. "No, my dear," I said, my voice calm, the voice I used in the mortuary. "I am here to help you." She laughed, a harsh, broken sound. I took her by the shoulders, meaning only to steady her, to look into her eyes and see the brokenness within. But she struggled. She saw the intent in my eyes, an intent even I did not yet fully understand. My hand, of its own volition, went to the scalpel in my coat pocket. It was so fast, a single, deep sweep across her throat. It was not neat, it was messy, panicked. But as her life fled, as she sank to the filthy stones, the screaming silence in my head softened, just for a moment. In taking a life, I had quieted the one that tormented me. I left her there, my heart hammering not with fear, but with a terrible, thrilling discovery. Annie Chapman was different. She was planned. I sought her out in the festering warren of Hanbury Street. This time, I was prepared. I brought my bag. When I led her into the backyard, I spoke softly. "Be still," I whispered. "This is a release." She was too tired, too defeated to fight much. The gin had done half my work for me. I laid her down gently, and then I began my work. It was not butchery. It was an autopsy of the soul. I sought the source of the corruption. I removed the uterus, that organ of creation now so defiled by the misery of her existence. I placed it beside her, a offering, a testament. See, I wanted to scream to the sleeping world. See what we are made of? See what we have become? But the silence was gone. In its place was a roaring, righteous purpose. I was not a killer. I was a surgeon excising a cancer from the world. With each life I took, I was preserving the memory of my Mary, keeping her pure image safe from the filth that had consumed these women. The night I met Elizabeth Stride, the fog was thicker than ever, a solid thing you could chew on. She was younger than the others, with a flicker of defiance still in her eyes. I found her near Burner Street. But something was wrong. A club across the street was letting out, men laughing and singing. The timing was poor. I led her into a dark yard, my hand tight on her arm. I could feel the frantic bird beat of her pulse. "Please," she begged, her voice a thin thread of sound. "I have children." Lies, I thought. They all lie. My Mary never lied. I pressed her against the wall, my scalpel finding its familiar place at her throat. But before I could make the cut, a man's voice shouted nearby, followed by a clatter. A cart was coming. The moment was shattered. Frustration, hot and sharp, lanced through me. My work was interrupted. It was unclean. In a rage, I sliced. It was a hurried, messy cut. It was not enough. She slumped down, gurgling, but the true work was undone. I fled, my mind a storm of fury. It was incomplete. The silence was returning, a taunting whisper at the edge of my hearing. I had to finish. I had to make it right. I walked, a phantom in the fog, my hands shaking, my surgical gloves stained. And then, as if God himself had delivered her to me, I saw Catherine Eddowes. She was being released from the police station for drunkenness, chuckling to herself as she staggered into Mitre Square. She was perfect, alone, unobserved. This would be my masterpiece. I cornered her in the square. There was no conversation, no time for pleas. My need was too great. I clamped a hand over her mouth and went to work. This was not the careful exploration of Annie Chapman. This was a furious, frantic search for something I could not name. The scalpel was a paintbrush, and her body was the canvas. I opened her from neck to pelvis. I rearranged her insides, a grotesque still life. I took her uterus and a kidney. I was not just collecting specimens. I was taking trophies of my victory over the silence, over the decay. I held the kidney in my gloved hand. It was still warm. In the profound quiet of the square, Broken only by the drip of my blade onto the stones, I felt a moment of pure, transcendent clarity. This was the source. This organ, which filtered the poisons of the world, was itself poisoned. I would keep it a reminder. Weeks passed. The city was in an uproar. Leather apron, Jack the Ripper. The headlines were screams, but they were the screams of children who did not understand the complex equation I was solving. I felt a strange communion with the police. We were both seeking the same thing in our own ways. Order from chaos. My final patient was Mary Jane Kelly. She was younger, livelier, and she had a room of her own in Miller's Court. It was a luxury my other subjects did not have. A private operating theater. I brought a bottle of whiskey. She was cheerful, flirty, her face still holding traces of a beauty not yet completely eroded. She called me dearie. We drank. I watched the life in her eyes, the easy laugh. It was the closest I had felt to a living soul since my own Mary died. For a moment, I doubted. The scalpel in my pocket felt heavy, alien. But then she coughed, a deep, wet rattle that was horribly familiar. It was the same sound my Mary had made, the sound of the machine breaking down. My resolve hardened. This would be the ultimate act of love. I would spare her the long, slow decay. I would show her and the world the beautiful, terrible truth inside. What happened in that room? It was not surgery. It was a descent. It was a rage against God, against disease, against the silence that had birthed me. I lost all sense of time, of technique. I dismantled the broken clock completely, spreading its pieces across the room. A final, desperate attempt to find the one faulty gear that had started it all. The bed, the walls, the floor, everything was painted with my question. Why? When it was over, I stood there, breathing heavily, my clothes soaked, my tools blunted. The silence was gone, but it had not been replaced by purpose, or clarity, or peace. It had been replaced by a deeper, more profound silence, the silence of the abyss. I had looked into the heart of darkness, and I had found nothing looking back. No answers, no truth. Only meat and bone and an endless, echoing void. I had not been saving anyone. I had not been honoring Mary. I had been a madman screaming in a charnel house, mistaking the echo for a reply. I walked out of Miller's Court and into the everlasting fog. I dropped my scalpel into the Thames, watching the dark water swallow it. Jack the Ripper was gone. He had performed his last operation on himself and had found himself hollow. I am an old man now. I live in a different kind of silence, in a room that smells of dust and memories. The newspapers call me a monster, a legend, but I was just a man with a boy's love for clocks, who tried to stop time, and in doing so, became a ghost in the machine of history, forever trapped in the silent, screaming moment between one tick and the next.